So a good topic of discussion for today would be the good guys and the bad guys. Two valued and multi-valued orientation. White, black, good guys, bad guys, total opposites. Says here, there are still others who tend to mix these two approaches from a multi-valued and a two-valued orientation. The third group of people often realizes that viewing phenomena in terms of opposites simplifies matters considerably, and that we often are in fact facing gray areas and continua rather than two clear-cut opposites. And that multi-valued versus two-valued orientation is a big battle I'm facing right now with theory development and trying to get this word out. The people who will understand this theory the best are those who are cultured into looking at world events as being multi-valued, not us versus them, or good guys and bad guys, because there's bad and good and bad. Or like Wreck-It Ralph, you're a bad guy, but you're not a bad guy. You know what I'm saying? Right here, you have young stars cooling and collapsing, and these are the bad guys, and these are the good guys. But it isn't bad guy, good guy, okay? The bad guy eventually becomes the good guy. You know what I'm saying? And that's how it works. Hi, Celeste. But I mean, it's completely a very, very weird example, but to look at it like that, you can start out as being young and rambunctious and getting in trouble, but then you grow up. Or you can look at it reverse. You could start out as a good person, a very young, tame child who gets A's and B's in school and does everything right, and then they discover meth or painkillers, and then they go down the tubes. But of course, that isn't with everybody. I mean, that's just an example. You have good inside the bad, bad inside the good. You don't have polar opposites. The majority of the time, there's no such thing as polar opposites. It's our language that skews things in that way. And I'll show you here in a second. One of the most salient traits of discourse produced in English and many other languages seems to be its bipolarity. It's that us versus them distinction. But not necessarily us versus them. She is beautiful, or he is tall. The road is narrow. That hill is steep. Her English teacher is good. That this place is cold. These colors are bright. This course was excellent. It isn't to say, and I'll read this out to you guys. It's not to say that needless to say, what these examples appear to suggest is that she might not be or someone else is not beautiful, that he might not be or someone else is not tall, and so on. The obvious counterparts of the words above that any competent speaker of English would normally think of appear to be ugly, short, broad, flat, bad, warm, dark, and poor, respectively. And the way the English word stock and that of many other languages has developed, these pairs of words and the corresponding words in many other languages suggest that someone may be beautiful or ugly, tall or short, that something may be steep or flat, good or bad, and so on. So our language sort of stacks our mind. It sort of allows us, or it forces us to think in terms of this or that. And we can tell that's how it is now with the political crap that's going on. You see these ads on TV all the time where it's like, oh, Joe Biden did this and Donald Trump did that, or yada, yada, yada. When you watch these political ads, it's like these people cannot possibly have done anything good in their own lives. From either perspective, they force them to be on polar opposites in the ads that we watch. It's very strange. It's very strange looking at that, because I'm like, so you're saying Donald Trump didn't do anything good in his entire life, or Joe Biden didn't do anything good in his entire life, and it's very weird looking at that. It's like straight propaganda now, but it's our culture. It's that two-valued orientation. There's good and bad and good. It says here, of course, English, again, like many other languages, allows you to express degrees of beauty, ugliness, flatness, and so on. For instance, we say in English, she is more beautiful now than when she was 25. Or this hill's much steeper than the one we climbed the other day. Still, the fact remains that the use of pairs of words like beautiful ugly and steep flat suggests that we are dealing with a major two-valued reality or two-valued orientation. And I got that from one of my classes, a couple of my classes reuse and use this book over again, but Language and Thought in Action by S.I. Hayakawa. This guy was a United States Senator from California, really smart guy here. I think there's lots of talks where he talks and gives a few examples of how powerful language is and how it can be manipulated and used against us and used as propaganda, and it can also be used to describe reality and describe nature in extremely complex terms. And its abuses can cause us to have mysteries that really aren't mysteries at all. And that being said, to continue this talk, just keep that in mind when you look at a lot of the arguments that you see in the mainstream media, especially in terms of scientist type stuff. They say, oh, short, tall, or fat, slim, smart or dumb. You can't be in between. You're either all smart, brilliant, super genius, or you're just an amoeba. You have scientist and you have layman. Oh, layman, they don't understand anything. You have engineer. Engineer who builds bridges and does really advanced things all the time. And you have layman who doesn't know how to build anything at all. It's like, what? You can be an engineer and not be a working professional engineer building bridges or designing things that you need to use. Heard of jerry-rigging something? And then you have bankers and non-bankers. Well, if you loan money to somebody and you get it back with interest, you're a banker. I mean, you don't do it professionally and make a living at it, but that's basically what bankers do. And the biggest one that I am dealing with is a scientist and a pseudoscientist, or a crank, or a crackpot. I get that label pseudoscientist a lot. They say, well, you don't accept what we believe, therefore everything that you are telling people is completely wrong. And that's that bipolar thing where it's either all this or all that. And I see that a lot. Is I can't have made any arguments at all in favor of this understanding of this theory because everything I say is wrong. It's like, what? Just think about the complete reverse of that. Say, for instance, you had a scientist who spent many years teaching, and he's really, really smart, and he apparently is, the old wise man at the top of science, so to speak. Now, is that to assume that he couldn't have accepted ideas that were wrong? Or has accepted ideas that were wrong? Or still accepts ideas that are wrong? No, not at all. There's a mix there. Sure, he's been in those institutions for a long time, but just because he's been in there for a long time, just because he goes along with the crowd, doesn't mean there aren't any ideas in there that are completely wrong that he accepts to be true. And the same thing goes with me. Just because I'm not somebody who's worked inside of those establishments, inside of those academic posts and all this, whatever you want to call a university system, just because I don't work inside it doesn't mean I don't have anything really incredible to share with people. Doesn't mean that my mind is somehow invalid and that everything that I say is wrong at all times. It's that bipolar mentality that a lot of people have. And it's even worse. This gross oversimplification is even worse among the people who label themselves as mathematicians, where they say 1 + 1 = 2. There is no exception to that rule. It's either right or it's wrong. It's that black or it's white. It's either you're producing nonsense or this actually is valuable. But there's a mix between all of it. There's lots of mathematicians out there that just produce a bunch of mathematical gibberish. Yet that doesn't mean that they don't know 1 + 1 = 2. You know what I'm saying? It's much more complex than our culture leads us to believe. And a way to describe that is through a bell curve. This is, statistical idea. So you have the mean, the average, and you have, the left side and the right side. The very rare portions of whatever it is you're describing, very rare portions of whatever it is you're describing. And you have the mean, where most of the ideas fall right here. Now, this goes with everything. It's a continuum. It isn't either you're ugly or you're drop dead gorgeous. Most people fall right here. It's not that you're a midget or really, really, really short, or you're Shaquille O'Neal, you're over 7 feet tall. Most people are right here. Same thing with science. Same thing with scientific ideas. It isn't that it's either you're just a pseudoscientist and everything you say is false, or you're a scientist and everything you say is correct. It's more or less right here. And that's the continuum we're facing here. I know a lot of what I talk about is wrong. I know. But that isn't the point. The point is, what if I have some things that are way over here that are actually incredibly correct, and this is where we're headed? Sure, I might be mostly down here, but I have one idea that's way over here. But what ridiculers do, they say, well, because you're mostly down here, then there's no possible way that you could have an idea way over here. It just doesn't make any sense. If you look at it from a bipolar viewpoint, where it's all good or all bad, of course that makes sense to you. But you can reverse that very easily. Let's just say you're a scientist and most of the ideas are right here. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that some ideas that you accept aren't down here, that are really trash and need to be tossed, like general relativity and the fusion model of stars and dark matter and Big Bang and, well, quite a few other ideas that are, total nonsense. Of course, those are way down here. But the majority of what they learn is over here because of, their education, which is very, excellent in many cases, but that doesn't mean that they don't accept ideas that are total nonsense. But being that we live in a bipolar society where it's either you're beautiful or you're ugly and there's no continuous thing there, it's very difficult for people to start looking at things in those terms because of the language we use, how we define things. And considering this theory, for instance, you have really big objects and really small objects. But I see this a lot too. The people who ridicule me, they go, well, how does a star lose all? It's really big. How does it lose all of its mass? Well, there's no evidence. Well, of course there's evidence. It's older stars. The red dwarfs are less massive than the orange and yellow stars. And then you have brown dwarfs that are smaller than red dwarfs, and Jupiters are smaller than brown dwarfs. The continuum's right there. It's right in front of them. But their mind is set up to look at it from a bipolar standpoint. It's either they're really massive or they're not massive. And the same thing goes with their luminosities. They're either shining or they're not shining. Same thing goes with their state of matter. It's either their plasma or their liquid and solid material. And then the gas stages are kind of, ignored. Oh, it's just gas. Don't think about that. Don't look at that as being important. Or they have strong magnetic fields, or they don't have strong magnetic fields. It's that bipolar mentality that a lot of I say bipolar, maybe a lot of them are, clinically bipolar, but it's that bipolar culture of the words we use, which kind of skews nature and takes away the continuous nature of nature. There's a mix. It's mixed all over the place. It isn't black and white. We don't live in a black and white world where it's all right or all wrong, or all good and all bad, or us versus them. And all right, yeah, this video is way long enough. I can't remember if I said hi Celeste, but hi Celeste. All right, guys. Oh, Baz, thank you for doing this new video. I know you're working hard on it. For those that don't know, Bad's working on another good video explaining some more of this diagram. But all right, y'all, take it easy.